You did an interview with Hugh Downs a while ago.
He was lovely.
And part of that was about that acceptance speech for that first Emmy. Tell me about that.
Well, Hugh's presence, again, made me feel very safe. So I talked about it. I had not talked about it before. Obviously, I was in some stage of mania or depression. It was my mother's birthday, and because she had not been able to go to the Oscars, it was very important to me that she go to the Emmys. So I went out and shopped, and she shopped, and we got her a beautiful dress, and la-di-da, and la-di-da. And me too. And the night of the awards, she starts to have a fit. She doesn't like this, she doesn't like that. My mother was a sweet, lovely woman. All of a sudden, she turns into a Dybbuk. Excuse me, which didn't help my condition. So I told her she could wear my dress. So she wore my dress. But it was, it was a familial thing. And I was already nervous anyway. I mean, who doesn't want to win an award? I was also dating Desi Arnaz Jr. at the time. And there was much made about that in the rags, the tabloids, or whatever we're calling them now. And there was big tension about that. Who was going to sit where? Was his mother going to have issues about it? La-di-da, la-di-da. And one thing kept piling on top of another. So when I won, and I was nominated in a category of heavy-duty actresses. When I got up there, I wanted to say, I'm so honored to be included in this group. I don't know where it went wrong, but it went elsewhere. And of course, I mentioned to you earlier my real serious disappointment that Al Freeman Jr. hadn't won. Anyway, I left that stage, and I have no idea what was coming out of my mouth. I'm going to UCLA, I'm going to be a psychiatrist, I'm going to... It was like I was Kathy and Patty was coming through. Only it wasn't funny. And as I recall, then I went on a drinking binge. My mother went back to where she lived, and we were estranged for a while, which was always anxiety for me. I mean, I was so thrilled we were able to get back together again and have a relationship that anything that interrupted that really freaked me out.
Was this the first time you talked about that to Hugh Downs? This
I
whole
think so.
incident?
I think it was.
And you went to that Emmy show with Desi Jr.?
Yes.
Okay. In the late 70s, Ethel Ross died. What was your reaction to that?
There was some sadness. There was some relief. I had gone to see her shortly before she passed. And I don't want to be haughty about it, but I wanted her to know that I forgave her. Some of it, she didn't know what she was being forgiven about. And Sean was a baby, and I had him with me, and I wanted her to see him. I hadn't resolved with Mr. Ross, and I didn't want to carry it around anymore. And so when she died, my brother had moved out here, and his wife had moved out here, and we went to the funeral in Palm Desert, and we had, what's that word we all use now? Closure. There's never closure. And you can see. But there is forgiveness. And it has to be real. And that's what lifts the burden.
A couple of TV movies you did in 1978. Just maybe a brief comment about each one, because you were nominated for an Emmy for both of these. The first one is...
I was?
Yep. A Family Upside Down. Anything?
I don't understand that nomination at all. It was a nothing part. I did nothing with it. I don't know.
Was it ever old hat to get nominated? Because you had many nominations.
Oh, no. Come on, I'm competitive.
Well, maybe it was that goodwill. I mean, that you did have that.
Maybe.
And then having babies 3. That ring a bell?
I'm trying to remember.
78?
Oh, that's not The Women, is it?
No.
Okay.
No, The Women's Room is
Women's
a
Room.
couple years later.
I thought that was a terrific performance, and I didn't get any nomination. So sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Now it's not about nominations to me anymore. Now it's about getting a job where I can really do what I do. If there was a nomination, I would be delighted. But it's not about that for me anymore.
You did a lot of TV movies and projects through the years. If you did have a role that was offered to you, you saw it as a job, and you thought it was, kind of a nothing role, did you always try to bring something special to it?
Oh, sure.
Find a way, an angle that you can make it stand out?
I had to make it real for me. Also, it was my obligation to do the best job I could for those people who hired me. That goes back to the same thing that my parents gave me as a little child. Sense of fair play. I never, to my knowledge, walked through one. Even the spider.
Right. 1979, you played Annie Sullivan in the remake of Miracle Worker, a TV movie. What was that like? Was that a part you always wanted to play at some point?
You bet. When I couldn't go to sleep at night, as a kid and on into my 20s and 30s, I would say Annie Sullivan's lines. Then Melissa Gilbert's company decided they were going to do it for Melissa. And they asked me, how could it be? I mean, I've been a very lucky girl, but wow. Uh-oh. I gotta call Annie. What will Annie think that I'm taking her role? So I called her, and I said, I'm really nervous. I want to do this, but I'm really nervous because I would never, ever want to do anything to insult you or hurt you. And she said, what are you so afraid of? Being better? That's what she said. And she gave me permission to do the best that I could. And it was important to me to not repeat her voice that I'd heard all these years, even though I loved that voice. It was important to me to bring a different Annie Sullivan. Just by my look, I was a different Annie Sullivan. I was more Irish looking. And I was very spunky. Annie's was strong and serious. Working with she's not a cat. Why isn't she doing cat things? The director was not very helpful to her. And he had asked me, he had made me promise that I would not give her any hints. Well, I promised that. What a stupid thing to do. So we've rehearsed, and she's really doing well, but it's not clicking. So we're on the plane to Florida, where we did it in a theater there before we did it as a film. And I'm sitting in the seat in front of her, and I'm thinking, I cannot let this kid down. I cannot let her. I cannot throw her to the wolves. So I broke my promise to the yucky director. And we sat on the plane the rest of the way, and we talked about it, and more and more and more. And she created her own Helen, and it was a legitimate Helen, and it was a respectful Helen, and we're in love with each other. She gave me a gold necklace. It spells out teacher on one side, and the other side in Braille. Pretty neat.
Did your playing Helen Keller help to inform your role when you played Annie Sullivan later?
Yes.
How
Oh,
so?
sure. I would use, actually, my recollections of certain moves that I did and she wasn't doing, and I was using the frustration that she wasn't doing that to inform what Annie was going to do. But she did a terrific job, and she deserved an Emmy. I had a lot of problems with my partners not getting Emmys.
I was just thinking that Melissa Gilbert, of all people, she also became kind of a queen of TV movies later.
Yes,
and also
she did.
She became the president of SAG also after you. So it sounds like she's following in your footsteps to some degree. You mentioned the women's room. Why was that a favorite of yours, that TV movie?
I based that character very specifically on my mother. My mother's dysfunctional behavior, and I felt I really nailed it. And it was a well-written part. It had its own little vignette, and somebody was better that year.
What are your memories of The Girl on the Edge of Town?
The Girl on the Edge of
1981 TV movie.
Town.
You were nominated again for an Emmy.
Oh, that's awful. I'm getting old. I can't remember.
Well, one of the comments I have here is that you were admired for one reason, because you sometimes played kind of a darker side, or characters with a darker side. Was that a plan, or just kind of you fell into that?
I remember now. It was a goal, but it had to evolve because I was used to being nice. I didn't want anybody to dislike me. So if I showed them that darker side, they would know that I was not all sugar and spice.
Did you like that challenge of playing those kind of roles?
I did. I loved it. When I would look at that girl, I would just fry her.
Do you think your own personal journey helped you to some degree in being able to play darker characters?
Of course. I draw on so many of the things when I'm acting. But usually my acting is very much instinctual. What's on the page becomes part of my instinct. And of course, you draw from your life experience.
You did an afternoon special in 1982 called Please Don't Hit Me, Mom, and you worked with your son, Sean Astin. What was that like?
It was nerve-wracking. This was his first thing, and you hear other stage mothers say, "Oh, my daughter begged me, and she begged me, and she begged me." Well, Sean really begged me, and he was 10 years old at the time, and I said I would do the afternoon special if they didn't have to hire him, but if they would audition him, among others. Well, what are they going to do? So they hired him, and they hired the right guy. He lived that in his home almost every day. When he said, "Please don't hit me, Mom," he was speaking to me, not some character. And it was excruciating and powerful and educational. Sometimes when you act, you work through some things as if you would in a therapy session. And look, he went on to be a hobbit.
Yes. In at least 3 movies, and big movies too.
Big movies.
Did you
Mom
want
never got those big movies.
Did you want your children or any of your children to become actors?
I always said I never wanted my children to be in this business. Then I realized, wait a minute, this business has been very good to me. If they want to do it, they're going to have to go through the hard knocks. But if they've got what it takes, and I believe they both do, Sean and Mac, then go for it. Mac was a big TV star.
Mac is Mackenzie?
Yes,
Yeah.
Mac Mackenzie.
Okay.
On The Facts of Life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he got so jaded. He would come home and he'd say, because he only had a little part, and they just wanted to see this cute little boy. Said, "Well, that was another $10,000 line." Well, he racked up a lot of money. He decided to get it all when he was 18, and unfortunately, he went the way of his mother in terms of being the guy that throws every party, hires every hockey rink, la-di-da and la-di-da. So he has struggled back. He got out of the business because he wanted to play ball, but the coach never put him in baseball. He has struggled back, and he's a working actor now. He's not starring in anything yet, but he's a working actor, and in my opinion, he is one of the best actors I have ever witnessed. He tells the truth. You can just see his eyes just tell you the truth, whatever he's playing. And Sean, of course, is that man. He was on Hallmark last night. He played an elf in a suit. And he was wonderful. He brought tremendous energy to the show.
You played Helen Keller, a real person. In 1984, you played another real person, Martha Washington, in a miniseries, George Washington. What was that like, playing such a historical character?
It was a ball. I mean, we were in all the actual places. Barry and I stood in Mount Vernon and overlooked the Potomac, and somebody said action, and we came out the door. Those I'm always impressed with costumes. They're a very big part of developing a character to me. Martha didn't have a lot to do. She just came up with the money. So I decided my Martha would be just so in love with George that she would just follow him around saying, George, oh, George, oh, George. And I lived the history. I mean, where else can you do that? That's when it's magic.
Well, that was another Emmy nomination.
Yes.
And then you had a daytime Emmy nomination for a show called Insight.
Oh, yeah. Father Kaiser used to produce Insight, and he was a buddy of mine, and every once in a while he'd drop by and put another script on the kitchen table. And, you know, how do you say no to Father Kaiser? We became really good friends through the years. I even went to Africa with him when the famine was going on. And I was a very recalcitrant Catholic. I wanted to believe. I really want to believe. But we stood on these piles, maybe 50 feet deep, of trash. Where these people were making their homes there. And I said to him, Bud, one chalice, what would it mean? And he said, for some reason, this is the way it's supposed to be. I can't buy that. I don't know what to do about it, but I can't buy that.
In the mid-'80s, you played not a president's wife, you played the president in a show called Hail to the Chief.
Oh.
Didn't last too long.
No, it didn't.
But
it was a funny show, though.
Kind of groundbreaking that mid-'80s have a female U.S. president. We still haven't had one yet, but...
And she was dressed to the nines. I had a wardrobe on that show that didn't quit.
Did you enjoy it?
And I just loved it. We had an Oval Office, and it was mine. It's a fabulous cast. Funny, funny show.
And the same year or in 85, 86, you started in a TV movie called A Time to Triumph. So what was the highlight of that experience?
The fella who became my husband 28 years ago, A Time to Triumph was about a woman who joins the Army so she can get health benefits for her ailing husband. He has a heart condition. So I was sent early to learn how to go through basic training. And I was to meet Drill Sergeant Pierce at some barracks, blah, 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 in my BDUs and my boots and whatever. So I went there and I talked to the, sergeant behind the desk, and I said, I'm supposed to see Drill Sergeant Pierce. And he said, oh, yes, just a minute. And Drill Sergeant Pierce came out, and I went, oh, my God. It was lust at first sight. But we worked. We were diligent. He was military. I was a very dedicated actress. And we had fun. We had lots of laughs. And he drove me, made me run around that track until I lost 18 pounds. And there came a time when his training of me was over. And that was kind of sad. So he went his way and I went back to shooting. And occasionally he'd drop by for lunch and there would be laughter and lust. And one day I had the day off and I'm sitting in this dreary motel room reading Shirley MacLaine's Dancing in the Light, all that woo-woo stuff. And all of a sudden, I sat straight up in the bed and said, holy, I'm in love with Mike Pierce? And this is woo-woo. As God is my witness, I heard. I went down the stairs, opened the door, and there he was. we've been together ever since. We still laugh a lot.
That's a great story.
It's true. I swear to you.
85 was a big year for you. You were elected president of the Screen Actors Guild.
That was so important
Only
to
the
me.
second woman after Kathy Nolan, I believe.
Kathleen Nolan,
Kathleen
right.
Nolan. Remember her from The Real McCoys.
That's right.
What was your platform?
My platform was eventually to merge AFTRA and SAG. I was really good at the interviews. You know, I was a good showgirl. I believe that's why I got elected.
Since you mentioned that, did any of that, you've said in this interview that there are things that you can't let go of. Did the Ross's training about being doing interviews, do you think it had any influence on how you, even at that time,
Still does.
did interviews?
Absolutely.
So right now maybe you're,
Right now I'm telling the truth.
yeah, I believe you.
Absolutely. But there's a way I
To conduct yourself.
talk
Yeah.
and conduct myself
Yeah.
that I might not do an hour from now when I'm eating a sandwich.
Right.
Yeah, that's training from childhood.
What was
Ed
going on?
Asner and the gang, his gang,
He preceded you, right?
Yes.
Okay.
got together and decided I could win.
Mm-hmm.
I really did my research. I mean, when I was asked a question, I gave an educated answer that I believed in. But I still believe that I was elected because I was Patty Duke. What it meant to me, I'm sure people didn't realize. The best way I can describe it is the drive from my home in West Los Angeles to the original Screen Actors Guild building in Hollywood took me past the apartments I had lived in, the places I had been drunk, the places where I had done naughty things. And eventually, each one fell away, and I was respected. All of those people respected me and voted for me, and damn it, I was going to do the job. And I did, but I had fantastic people around me who, in some cases, spoon-fed me things because I had to be spoon-fed. You know, I hadn't been a unionist since childhood, but my passion was able to incite the crowds. I would never do it again. Why I ran for a second term, I will never know, except that sometimes I just can't let go.
But you were elected for a second term, too.
I was elected for a second term. I did not finish the term because I was doing a morning talk show. I was the hostess, a series, and SAG. And occasionally, I closed my eyes, and it just was too much. And I couldn't let go of the paying job, so I had to give up SAG.
And did you also, was doing Call Me Anna, was that involved in that?
That
Or
was
that
in and
was
around
later?
that time, yes.
Okay. So what was going on at SAG at the time you were president in terms of the issues? What are the things that you had to deal with?
Well,
You talked about the
first of
merger.
all,
Well, let me start there. SAG and AFTRA just merged in the last year or something like
Yeah.
that? What do you think of that? And that it took so long, and what do you think about it?
I think that it's a little cumbersome, but it's new. And I think it's worth a shot. I have always thought it was worth a shot. You know, you can always go back to being a separate union. Yeah, I really believed in it all this time. You know, we all differ about how it should have happened and who should have called it what. And the toughest time I had as SAG president was in the boardroom. You have 99 actors. Everybody's got a point of order. Long about 3:30 in the morning, I would say, "The emperor is naked, go home." I wasn't good at wrangling them, and I was not good at my Roberts rules. And Bill Shallert, my papo, had preceded me in the presidency at SAG, and occasionally he'd stand up and I would take it as a lecture. And he was just trying to inform me, but oh dear, you know, it's father and daughter.
It must have been fun to watch.
It was.
What do you think your greatest accomplishment was when you were during your terms?
Inciting the passion. Letting people know that those up here really are fighting for those who seem to be down here. You know, you don't work, unless you're doing a movie that's a soliloquy, you don't work alone. And every person is part of your performance. So I don't care if they have half a line or no lines or whatever. They need to be represented.
Were you prepared for the politics? And by the way, the politics aren't unique just to SAG, but all unions, there are politics and things orchestrated often. Were you ready for that, or were
No.
you surprised by that?
I was very surprised by that. I did learn it during the campaign, and it scared me. But I thought that my love would overpower.
And when Melissa Gilbert became president, did you have a conversation with her at all?
I did. I said, "What, are you crazy?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Go get him, girl." And she did. She was a terrific president. She was a far better president than I was. I served my purpose, and she served hers very well.
Let me throw out some other titles and just get maybe a quick reaction from you, or response,
Okay.
or comment from some of the shows you did. Another Emmy nomination for an episode of Touched by an Angel.
I loved that show. I mean, as a viewer,
Yeah,
I loved that show.
and you did a couple more episodes after
And
that.
I did a couple of more episodes, and I tried hard to beg the way I did on the other show to sort of become a regular angel. That didn't come to pass,
What
but
appealed to you about that show?
the goodness. You know, in a way, I'm a realistic person, and in a way, I'm Pollyanna. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off.
In '91, you did the Torkelsons. You were reunited with Papo,
Papo.
William Shallert.
But he had another daughter.
What was that like? He was a series regular, I think, on the Torkelsons.
Was I?
No, he
No,
was,
he
I
was.
think.
He was the father. He was everybody's father.
That was a spinoff from Cheers, I
Right.
remember. It didn't last a long time, but
I admired that little girl. I don't remember her name. I'm sorry. God, she was good. She would sit in the window and look at the moon, and everything she said was so true. She was so pure. And being reunited with him, of course, is a blessing anytime. It was hard to just be a one-time deal, though, and have him go on with his other daughter.
Amazing Grace.
Amazing Grace.
A series,
Mm-hmm.
and you had a request about that, I read about
Remind me.
where that was shot. They offered it to you.
Oh, I'm
and
so
you
dumb.
said,
I am so dumb. I said, they offered it to me. That was back in the days when you got offers. And I said, yes, if you'll shoot it where I live, Coeur d'Alene. They said yes. And they came here, and it was winter, and they didn't think it was such a hot idea. I don't really know what went wrong. I know there was scuttlebutt about me. To me, I was behaving properly, doing my job, but there was some kind of politics that somehow said I was behaving erratically. I have no idea if that had to do with the demise of the show, or the cold, or the expense. It's hard when you don't know. You know, it's lingering. What did I do wrong? Did I do anything wrong?
this is kind of a small town. Where did they shoot that?
They shot it right. The church is about 3 blocks from here that we used, and the house is about 2 blocks from there. And then, of course, we'd go out, and I would stand on the lake shore and talk to God over the lake.
You were reunited with Sean, your son Sean, in Amazing Love. And that was just a year ago.
Is that a Hallmark?
I,
Oh, no.
Amazing
No,
Love.
that's the
That was
Christian-based film.
Okay, that's about
That's
a year,
the
year or
Christian-based
so
film,
ago.
and I'm about to do another.
Okay. So working
It was
with Sean again.
it was so brief. And the other thing is, all mothers my age complain that their sons and daughters are on the phone all the time, or texting. He had a bigger part than me, and I would see him a little bit, but it was not a satisfactory visit. But it was a job.
So you're doing another one now, you said?
I'm doing another one.
Is this a series or a
They
anthology?
make them from time to time.
Okay.
And this is the premise is this man keeps coming to this radio station that I either own or manage, and he wants to buy time to promote his religious telethon. And she says, "Oh, we don't do that here. We don't have religion here." And he's only offering a little pittance of money, and he keeps annoying her, and she keeps telling him no. And then she starts raising the price. Well, if you could come up with this, maybe I would think about it. And eventually, of course, he comes up with the money, and she has to let him do it. It's an interesting ending, and I'm going to ask if it can be changed. I don't know.
You've heard it here first.
At the end, the telethon is going on, and they have my assistant call and get one of the telethon people, and she says, "I'd like to know more about this Jesus stuff." I thought it would be more interesting if my character called anonymously and said, "I want to know more about this Jesus stuff." Who knows? All they can say is, "No, go sit in your dressing room and mind your own business."
Where is this available, or where will it be available?
I don't know. Honey, do you know?
No, they sell it through their church programs.
Oh,
It's on their websites, but I don't have the website here.
it's amazing how much I don't know.
Oh, speaking about endings or changes, I just remembered something. When you did the remake of Miracle Worker and you played Anne Sullivan, what was the ending of that version? Was it the original stage version, or
Yes.
was it was the original stage version?
It was the original stage version. She says, "Who are you?" And I say, "Teacher." And she goes away, and she comes back with the keys. And I say, "I love Helen." forever and ever. And we sit at the pump.
Did you have any influence on that decision, or if it's just
No.
the way they wanted to make it, true
Yeah.
to the stage?
I tried very hard to keep a low profile. I was so thrilled to be able to do it.
You talked a lot about your process just in the course of talking about the projects you've done, but did you, from the time you were a child into your adulthood, did your process change, or has it been consistent in how
yes.
you received, written words and processed it on how to perform it?
Certainly, in my opinion, it's evolved. Plus, I have worked with the best and I have stolen from the best. My process now is always the written word. That's been all through the years. And searching myself to see if I can tell the truth with those words. Sometimes I will ask for just a word to be changed, which will make it easier for me to get their message across. It's what fits in your mouth better.
Where do you keep your Oscar?
In the kitchen. He's holding up the cookbooks. That's where we spend most of our time. So I decided, I kept moving him around, and it's been 50 years. He's held up a lot better than I have. So I decided I'm going to put him in the kitchen where we all see him all the time.
So are the Emmys holding at the other end of the cookbooks, or where are
No,
the Emmys?
the Emmys are in the living room. The Emmys move around. It depends on my mood and what bookshelves are available.
So what do you attribute to the longevity of your career?
I don't know. It hasn't been long enough for me. I think probably my honesty has something to do with it, and my willingness to be a team player, and my willingness and my ability to deliver. I may not audition well, and I don't, and you have to now. Everybody auditions. I suck at it.
Why?
Because the younger people who are doing the hiring don't know people like me. Sometimes we do it from here on video. I'm even worse at that. And sometimes I go there, and I think I just get so nervous. And I think there's also a resentment that I haven't really resolved yet. A resentment for having to audition. Look at all these years. Look at all I've done. Look at all these gold things you gave me. You can't give me another job? Because I live in Idaho? I think maybe I have not diagnosed it properly yet. But it's been one job in 5 years.
And that's, if you're speaking of like Ryan Murphy or Glee, that's a guy who obviously does appreciate your body of work.
Oh my God. He treated me like a queen.
I would think you probably didn't have to audition for that
I
one.
didn't have to audition, and they totally rearranged their schedule because I had a conflict with a psychiatric convention, and they rearranged their schedule, which meant building the sets differently, and I mean, it was a big deal. I was very impressed.
Have you got any fan reaction? Because there are a lot of Gleeks out there.
Oh, yes. The tweets went on and on. I don't do Facebook, so...
Because your character, I mean, you played a jewelry shop owner, I believe, and
Right,
you
who-
were helping Blaine, the character Blaine, who's gay,
Who's picking
pick out a
out-
ring for his boyfriend, right?
Right.
But you also, it turns out, are
I
a
let
lesbian
him
in
know.
there.
I let him know early on in the conversation that I too am gay. And she did it in a very, very nice, subtle way. And then the only other scene was in a restaurant with the four of us, and a lot of giggling, and me asking, help,
The character, or
Baxter.
Meredith.
oh yes.
Me asking Meredith to marry me. And I had to get down on my knee, which was the hardest part.
Well, I would think. I mean, the part had some meaning to the show in terms of
It
what
had
you were,
tremendous
what
meaning.
you were teaching, I guess, as
Exactly.
that character.
The community, you know, there's been rancor in the gay community, male and female. That was a moment to show compassion and love.
Yeah. And honesty.
I hope we get it back.
What would your fans be surprised to know about you?
I thought they knew everything. That I can be really grouchy. Ask my husband. He won't tell you, but yeah, I can be, you know, I like to have my way. And mostly he gives it to me.
How do you feel about fame? About being famous?
I feel a lot of ways. Sometimes I feel it's a burden. Not much. You know, there are heavier burdens. I think you have to be grateful that that many souls are sending energy your way. And certainly respect the fact that people are willing to hear you.
When you're walking on the street today and you're recognized, what's the first thing people say to you?
And I go back to them. And then there's usually an embrace and loving words. And sometimes a conversation. I mean, sometimes we'll stand there for, not today, it's 5 degrees. But I'm very friendly. I'll talk to everybody.
And this is a small town, so you've been here a while.
23
So
years.
I would think there's a lot of people who, I mean, they're just kind of used to you being here. Is
They're
that
used to
right?
me. They're very used to me. They're used to my likes and dislikes in, you know, the cafes and things like that. But yeah, it's very rare now that anyone is surprised. They may be for a second. Oh, I knew you lived here, but I thought I'd never get to see you. That kind of thing.
What advice would you give to an aspiring actor, especially,
my God.
especially a child actor?
Oh, God. Practice, practice, practice. Follow your instinct. If it doesn't feel right, it isn't. Your passion, of course, will take you in all kinds of directions. And you've got to follow that. I didn't used to think that. Now I know it from working in the theaters around here. You got to find out. But you also got to be able to fall back on an education. I stress education, education, education. And I've had a number of students come out of the high schools and the university here that I've watched grow and learn in their acting careers. And they've got one on me. They do Shakespeare. I have never done Shakespeare. I'm afraid of the language, and I'm too lazy. Oh, you're too hungry.
Shut up, okay.
I think now it's laziness, but it was fear most of my life. And I never ran into anybody who kind of appealed to me, who could teach it to me.
What are you proudest of?
What am I proudest of? My marriage and my children. And my grandchildren, they're all growing up pretty good.
What about career-wise?
Career-wise, it's hard to say. Certainly the miracle worker. But I want to be proud of something, a little closer to now. I'm proud that when I get a job, I'm going to give you what you paid for. And maybe even more.
Do you have a biggest regret about your career?
I don't know. I'm sure there are. Recently I've, listed them. Oh my God, we shouldn't have moved here. Oh my God, we shouldn't have done this. Oh my God, we shouldn't have that. Who knows? I have no idea. I could have stayed in Los Angeles and nobody would have turned over the rock anyway. It was more important that I have this balanced life that I have with Mike, and more important for me to be on my spiritual journey, which is very rocky right now. I kind of get there and then I back off, and every time a relative passes, I get angry at God, and maybe you're not there and maybe you are. That journey still continues.
What do you know for sure?
I'm beginning to know for sure that there is something after this. I'll tell you a very private story. A friend of mine passed 2 weeks ago from cancer. It had been a very short time and very ugly and painful. So the next morning, I smoke. So I go out in the garage where I have this little Cinderella corner, I call it. And I have my coffee and my cigarette. I'm in the garage. I put my coffee on the bench and light up. And a bird flies through my hair. A little bird flies through my hair and lands on the ashtray and jumps over the coffee cup and drinks from the coffee cup. One of the favorite things my friend and I used to do is to find a corner, smoke, drink coffee, and gossip. To me, that was a sign. What was that bird doing in the garage? Why did it check out the ashtray of the coffee? I don't know. Maybe it was just nature. To me, it was a sign that I needed. And if it works for me, I'll use it.
What do you want to be remembered for?
Oh my. Being tall and gorgeous. Being a good person. Doing the best I could with what I had.
Thank you, Anna. Patty Duke.
Thank you, Steve.